Hi everyone, I'm Rachel English, Director of Space Foundation Discovery Center. One of my favorite parts of my job is all of the cool people that I get to see and interact with on a daily basis. Recently, I had a great conversation with one of our docents, Lou Ramon, who actually did some work on the lunar lander like we see right here behind me. Let's check it out. Hi Lou, thank you for talking about the lunar lander with me today. I am so excited.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Rachel.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background and the work that you did in the space industry?
I've been in the human spaceflight business for almost 50 years and went to NASA right after college. I was transferred into the astronaut office where we were responsible for developing procedures and training the astronauts. And after another year or so, I was lucky enough to get assigned to Apollo 11.
Wow.
Then this was back before we knew that Apollo 11 was going to go to the moon.
Sure.
The carrot they held in front of my nose when they offered me that job was that there was an outside chance, very outside chance, that it might be the first lander. About 6 months after we were assigned, they named Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin to the crew for Apollo 11. We reported then directly to them. And my job with this thing was what they call the Lunar Module Crew Station Engineer. So I was responsible to Neil for the operation checkout of every piece of equipment that he would operate and touch inside and outside of the lunar module.
So that job meant that you got to be up close and personal with the lunar lander, both the exterior, the interior. You really got to know it pretty well.
Yeah, I did, and I got to tell you, one of the neatest things for me was the first time I got to get in this thing on the factory floor in Long Island. Was the realization that I was in a real spacecraft and the spaceship was going to go to the moon. I didn't really have time to think about that again until the last time I got in the lunar module, when we were stowing it maybe 4 days before launch. And that was the time after we got all the equipment in and in its place that it really struck me as I was standing in there that the next time anybody's going to be in this thing is going to be on the way to the moon, and
wow.
It's potentially going to be successful and be able to be the first lander. I mean, it was really a neat feeling.
I've got chills. So most of us are never going to step foot into a spacecraft like this lunar lander. Can you kind of tell us what that was like, what it felt like to be in that space, what it looked like inside?
I was familiar with the inside, at least in terms of our plywood mock-up was concerned. It was a little different feeling in this when you realized you were really in the spaceship. This wasn't wood and stuff. This was thin, it was lightweight, it was delicate. In some ways, it actually looked crummier than the mock-up, because they had to touch up a lot of paint where workmen had been in there and scratched things, and they touched it up. And frankly, my comment when I first saw it was I wouldn't buy a used car that looked like that.
Oh no!
But it was tight in there, especially when you get on a spacesuit and the backpack and stuff. There were no seats in it. The original design for the lunar module had seats, and it was laid out more like a helicopter cockpit with lots of glass to look out as you were landing.
That stuff's really heavy, though.
That's really heavy, and weight was one of the big challenges that the designers at Grumman faced. So to make it smaller, they made the decision that they would take out the seats, and the astronauts would stand right up close to the little triangular windows up there, so that they could look out and get a wide field of view with a minimum amount of glass, because glass is heavy.
Yeah.
The pressure vessel, the structure itself, was less than half as thick as a soft drink can.
Oh man, you can crush one of those.
You could crush one of those, and one of the challenges that we constantly had to keep in our mind, we had to remind the astronauts to be very careful working around inside, because it was possible to kick a hole, punch a hole in it. In fact, about 2 o'clock one morning, I got a call that they punched a hole in your spaceship
Oh no, that's the worst kind of
It's the
call.
worst kind of call you can get, but we got there, you know.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. You never really know as an engineer, as a designer, what some unintended consequences might be. Again, before I was assigned to Apollo 11, some engineer at Grumman was given the job to make the lightest weight, simplest hatch door that he could come up with.
Sure.
But just like you have to do when you get a refrigerator, you got to decide where you want to put the hinge.
Right.
So the door opened inward, and for whatever reason, the designer decided to put the hinge on this side, so the door swung like that. And that meant that the astronaut that was on the right side of the cockpit as you look out was kind of stuck behind the door.
Oh, so it would open.
It opened
like in
up
front
and
of you.
would trap him, yeah. And that was the lunar module pilot. Now, before the astronauts were named to the crew, my boss came to us, John and myself, and asked us who we thought should go out first. And because of the way the door swung, it was obvious the person that was standing on the left-hand side, the commander's side,
The person that wouldn't have to maneuver
it wouldn't
around
have to
the
maneuver
door.
around the door because you really couldn't.
Yeah.
Now, I know that wasn't the final reason for why Neil Armstrong came out, but it was definitely a contributing factor, and one that I'm
Wow.
sure that design engineer never thought of
Sure.
as he
Yeah.
was designing it.
That's such a good example of the way that the stuff that we make can
Oh yeah, well look at,
impact things we can never imagine.
sure, well you look at the whole shape of this thing, and frankly, a lot of people when they first saw this, especially when it was under construction, thought it was very, very ugly. I was kind of taken aback by it myself the first time I saw it being put together at the Grumman plant.
We're so used to this image now. It's iconic.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I
But
can.
this is really
seeing
form
it for the
follows
first
function.
time.
It didn't have to fly in the air. It was designed to do two things: land and take off.
Didn't need to be pretty.
Didn't need to be pretty, but I have to tell you, after working on the Eagle for almost a year,
Yeah.
inside and outside of it, I think it's the prettiest spaceship that I've worked on in my career. And I've gotten to work on the Gemini, on this space shuttle, the International Space Station, but this is the most beautiful thing that I've had a chance to
It's
work
a
on.
sight for sure.
Oh yeah.